We begin with a bit of background needed to understand the development of our rubric. The course in question is a freshman-level history course, Science and Technology in American Society since 1865. It is a core curriculum course with some state-level requirements, and it fulfills 3 of the 6 hours of American history required for all undergraduate degrees. More than 90% of students are engineering, science, or nursing public health majors, and many of these are international students. The course itself is highly interactive and utilizes multimedia, project-based learning, and experiential learning with embedded librarians and use of library makerspaces. It is a relatively new course designed from the beginning to utilize both open educational resources and an open pedagogy, and it is centered on the OER. The instructional team, an experienced instructor and 2 doctoral students, is authoring original textbook content for the 10 Common Course lessons. The general historical context is modified from an existing open textbook. And the linchpin of the course is the open pedagogy-based group project, where students delve deeper into the content by conducting research on a narrow topic relating to the societal impact of science and technology, and present their findings by creating short essays, videos, podcasts, makerspace builds, or even a video game. This student-created content becomes part of the materials for future students. As we modified, curated, and created content, several key issues arose which can be summed up by the simple questions of what should go where and how to organize the OER textbook. We knew we wanted consistency in instruction and a common syllabus across instructors, course sections, and course modalities. We also knew that many of our students had a poor grounding in American history, and our course is a highly specialized survey of American history. How should the historical context, the background narrative to our course content, be presented? Information on topics such as Gilded Age politics, progressive era reforms, and the civil rights movements are needed to better understand the interrelatedness of science, technology, and society. Other questions arose about how much information should go into the OER, how to best utilize the LMS, and most importantly, what would remain for the instructor to do in the classroom space. And our final issue was how and where to include the student-created content. In an epiphany over lunch at a favorite campus area taco joint, we came up with our 3-ring Circus solution. Placement would be based upon both the specific requirements of the materials, then the individual advantages of the OER, LMS, or classroom space. It was both an aha moment, where a straightforward process made for simple decisions, and a duh moment, as in, why didn't we think of this before? We also determined that a 3-ring approach would work best in organizing the OER content. Part 1 of the OER would be reserved for the bulk of our original authored materials, with a chapter corresponding to each lesson. Part 2 contains historical context materials, and most student-created content would be in a case studies appendix. We created a flowchart rubric to streamline decision-making. A yes answer to a question box leads to specific placement. Key issues such as the purpose of the material, copyright issues, and database usage quickly determined LMS materials. The next series of questions led to placement in the appropriate ring of the OER. What remains is for the classroom space. While our flowchart is for a history course with student-created content, the rubric could easily be modified for other courses and projects that face similar issues of multiple types of content, specific course materials, and required background information.
Course-specific content and class assignments should go into the Master LMS module. For example, Science and Technology in American Society 2 focuses on analytical writing. The analytical writing assignment uses OER and course content to inform students' writing about the Eads Bridge over the Mississippi River, pictured here. But the skill itself is course-specific and therefore goes into the LMS. The OER can include text and video information about the Eads Bridge, but the skill development instructional workshops and the assignment itself will not. These are items that instructors may tweak or even toss out from semester to semester, and therefore would require frequent updates to the OER. They are also items that best lend themselves to classroom instruction and real-time instructor feedback. As such, they are best housed and modified in the LMS. You should also consider whether the content is supplementary to the OER and/or course-specific materials. Science and Technology in American Society 2 provides supplementary materials for the OER in the form of chapter overviews and student activities. These are formatted using H5P technology, which requires a license, and can be integrated with the gradebook managed by the LMS. H5P activities could go into the OER if the instructor does not plan to track student participation or progress. However, if the instructor wants to use them as participation activities managed by the LMS or gradebook, they should go into the LMS. Another item to consider when assessing your 3-ring circus is whether or not the content under consideration is copyrighted or password protected. Any course content that includes copyright protected content or requires a login should go into the LMS. This includes databases and password-protected university library materials. The OER should ideally be accessible to all students, whether or not they are enrolled in your class or even your institution. Any resources provided by your institution that require a login are not accessible to all and therefore belong in your LMS. Make sure to follow these guidelines when working with student-created content too.
The somewhat pride and joy of this class, at least from my perspective, is the student-created research projects, the product of which can be hosted in either the master LMS or the OER. Each student in the online course, or group of students in the in-person course, chooses a research topic and puts together a semester project. They may write a simple paper on the topic, or harness their creativity and create a video, a podcast, a web page, or even a video game, among a few other options. At the end of the semester, these projects are then edited by us, the instructors, to be combined with similar projects and presented in an H5P format in the LMS as case studies for future students to learn from or use as examples for their own projects. Some of the best ones will be annually versioned into the OER if space and content allows. Because we use the information gathered by the students and only provide justified edits to make the project presentable in the OER and/or the LMS, the students are contributing to the annual version final product of the OER and helping future students learn the topics.
The OER team has also created or curated universal content to be used across sections and instructors. These materials can be chapters written for the 10 common lessons, or Part 1 of the OER, additions or modifications to materials derived from the existing OER textbook for the traditional U.S. History Survey, other curated materials such as videos, or review questions created for each chapter. Student and instructor materials both start at the same point of the flowchart rubric for placement decisions, with the copyright and database questions. If the answer is yes to either of these questions, the materials must be hosted in the LMS. If the answer is no to the copyright and database questions, then the materials can be placed in the OER. If student-created content is specific to one lesson, then it will be placed in the lesson chapter in the OER in an H5P interactive booklet. If the topic is broader-based, it will go into the OER Case Studies appendix. If instructor-created materials are specific to one lesson, then those materials are placed within that lesson chapter in Part 1 of the OER. If broader-based, the materials will be placed in the historical context, or Part 2 of the OER. Finally, we have the instructor-created case studies, which supplement the common course materials and belong in the classroom teaching presence space across modalities. Individual instructors develop case studies that highlight areas of content or are based upon instructor strengths. In addition to the instructor case studies, classroom time is devoted to review of the OER LMS content, class discussions, targeted reteaching of fuzzy concepts, skills workshops, and of course, time for groups to work on their projects with instructor mentoring. Finally, we have determined that juggling materials for this course requires an annual review. The first task is editing the 10 lessons and determining if individual case studies should become universally taught and move to the OER or Master LMS module according to the flowchart rubric. Then any additional changes to content will be made, including selection and editing of student-created content, which will be placed according to the flowchart rubric. In this way, the course and the OER remain fresh and updated through our evaluation process, balancing the need for common materials, the addition of new instructors, and instructor preferences for teaching the content. If you would like further information, feel free to reach out to us.